This video will be a follow-up to the Hoskins Cemetery debacle that has been going on in Clay County for the last several months. Those of you who follow this channel know that I've posted two previous videos about the Hoskins Cemetery. One right after the feud on relocating Hoskins Cemetery started, and the second video I recorded up at the Hoskins Cemetery on Memorial Weekend. I stated that day, on Memorial Weekend, that I had a bad feeling that it would be my last visit to the Hoskins Cemetery. Well, today is a follow-up to that video. This is Memorial Gardens in Manchester, the relocation cemetery where the Hoskins Cemetery has now been moved to. And we're going to show you that area here today. The front entrance to the Manchester Memorial Gardens is way up that way. We're on the back side of the cemetery, and back here there's another cemetery called the Burchell Cemetery in a separate fenced area. And it's back here in this far corner where they claim they have relocated the Hoskins Cemetery. There were 79 known graves at Hoskins Cemetery and a number of unknown. But a good friend of mine photographed every grave there in the last 2 months, 3 months, and there were 79 photographs of known, of stones, of markers of different sorts. Some of those were field stones, but there were also a number of other unmarked graves and sunken spots. So you could easily say that there were probably upper 80s. Now, as a matter of comparison, we're going to try to give you some, and I know that videos, phones don't always do the job. This is the area where they have supposedly relocated the Hoskins Cemetery. The first thing you will notice, there's not any kind of temporary marker here. No temporary marker, a lot of rock, a lot of sandstone. Now, did they draw out a grid? Well, if they didn't, I'll guarantee you they'll draw one out after they watch this video. But there's a possibility they drew out a grid and they'll come back and place the stones or markers, whatever they're going to put here later on. But the biggest point I want to make here today has to do with spacing and the amount of the amount of room required to reinter, rebury these bodies. And I want to talk about this area right here for the next few minutes. This is a previously relocated cemetery. There are 6 rows with 4 stones in each row. This is the Lunsford Cemetery, which was relocated from an area where they built a new road into the hospital. There are 4 in each row, 6 rows for a total of 24. This gentleman right here has both a regular stone and a military stone. But nonetheless, there are 24 relocated burials here. And the vast majority of them say unknown Lunsford Cemetery. And they came from the area, like I said, where they built a new road to the hospital. Now, the area of the Lunsford Cemetery, if you start stepping it off, there's about 3.5 feet in between each grave. About 3.5 feet. And there's about 7 to 8 feet from stone to stone. So there's roughly 51 feet from this end to this end. 51 feet. Keep these measurements in mind, folks. 51 feet from one corner of the Lunsford down to this corner of the Lunsford. And I'll just step off right here, across through here. Let's see, there's about 19 feet in width. So 51 by 19 feet gives you 24 burials. Well, that's the area of spacing that they did for this relocation anyway. Roughly, call it 52 by 20. for 24 graves. Down there about where the road is, just this side of where the road is the first one of the 6 rows, and I'm standing here at the 6th row. 24 graves in this area, please keep that in mind. And here is the area, comparatively speaking, for the Hoskins Cemetery that had at least 79 graves. Now I want to say there were a few graves that went elsewhere. So I would say that there's probably at least 60 some burials. At least 60 some burials in this area right here. 60 some here, 24 here. If they've spaced these things accordingly, there's not enough room in here for 60 some burials. There's not enough room in here for 50 some burials. I'm beginning to think this is a mass grave. Or they put them in here literally right next to each other, head to foot. Who's to know what happened here? Who's to know if this project was done properly? A couple of things that really bothered me about this project. There were motions and affidavits pending before the courts. There was an appeal pending before the court. I personally filed one affidavit with the court. They were never heard, never entertained. The Board of Education just went ahead and moved the Hoskins Cemetery. Now, we've discussed the amount of space for 24 graves here. This is, I'm going to say, 60 some odd burials here, because there are some that went into 2 or 3 other cemeteries, but only where family made that choice. But given this earth has been disturbed, if you turn right over here toward the tree line in the woods, you'll see a dirt. This pile of dirt obviously is the dirt that was dug out for the graves. Get down in here where you can see a little better and follow the topo here compared to the road. This little grassy area, obviously it went up and around through there already. So there's probably about 4 feet of dirt, 4.5 feet of dirt down here on the lower end, right in this area. And up in here, you see how the road drops off right here. There's a lot less dirt on this end. But this is supposedly the dirt that was removed for the graves. I don't know if there's enough dirt right here for 60 some burials. It's more like there's enough dirt here for one big mass grave. And the rest of the ground was just upset a little bit to look the part. All things considered, I don't think there's enough room between here and down there on the other end for 60 some burials. Not following the normal spacing of this cemetery. Today at the Manchester Memorial Gardens with my buddy Brent. He's a native, or he's a resident of Manchester, Clay County. Brent, you've been following this situation at Hoskins Cemetery. You want to share your thoughts on what has happened here?
Well, honestly, Mr. Phillips, I think it's a shame that they took a cemetery that set up on top of a hill and was a beautiful setting, and they have converted it, once they moved it, into what appears to be a mass grave. You have stated that you believe there were 78 or 79 known graves, and according to my father-in-law, Carlo Burns, who used to care for the Hoskins Cemetery up there on the knob, he knew that there were several unmarked graves because families just simply couldn't afford headstones. So the true numbers may never be known, but just based on the numbers that we do have, we can rest easy today knowing that there's no way all the people are here that are supposed to be.
Yep, I agree with you. Now, I did some math, Brent, while we were talking. In this square footage area right here on the left, where they relocated the Lunsford, that's about 1,000 square feet. There's 24 graves in there. If they did the same spacing here, 24 graves here, if they did the same spacing, there's only room for about 50 graves in this area. So I don't know what kind of spacing they did, man.
I'm not sure, sir. I think there are always more questions to be asked, and unfortunately, we don't have anyone who seems to be willing to give those answers.
That's a good point. You know, this whole thing from the Board of Education's perspective has been shrouded in secrecy and backroom deals and whatnot. If we knew the truth, we'd probably be shocked.
Shocked would be a mild way of putting it.
Yep. But, you know, I don't have any relatives that were buried at Hoskins, but your wife
Yes, sir.
had relatives there.
Yes, sir.
And I've talked to so many people that had relatives at Hoskins Cemetery. And, you know, this situation here, Brent, is just one situation, because most recently some pictures have surfaced of what they're doing to the stones. You want to share a little information about what you know about the headstones from Hoskins?
Well, sir, I had the opportunity to write an opinion editorial for the Clay County News just a couple days ago. And to the best of my understanding, the headstones were discovered somewhere in the woods on school board property. And it appears that they were just discarded, and several of which have been destroyed, including my wife's great-grandparents' stone has been broken. And we have photographic proof of that. And I feel like it's just one more thing to add insult to the families. And it's hard for me to describe how my wife feels, but it's been hard on me to watch her continuously crying and upset and having to deal with this because of what we feel like is basically greed and a lack of oversight.
Yeah, I agree.
It's been hard on us all. It's my in-laws, you know, are in their upper 80s, and they don't have the ability to speak out or, you know, share their opinions, and they have, you know, they've entrusted my wife to act on their behalf, and we're doing everything that we know to do.
Yeah.
But we're not sure why no one is stepping in and saying they can do something about this.
Yep. The court system has disappeared. The Board of Education has never been willing to sit down and talk to people, other than they talked to the people that were willing to for the move easily, but those that were hesitant or resistant to the move, the Board of Education just slammed the door on. The thing about those stones that bothered me is the photographs, and I'm going to add some photographs at the end of this video, so stay tuned to the end of the video and we'll show you the pictures of the stones as they were photographed here in the last week or two. But those stones, Brent, they weren't put on pallets.
No, sir.
And handled gingerly and put into respectable stacks for people to come and claim.
No, sir. In fact, we've never had the opportunity to claim them, even though we tried to contact the Board of Education on multiple occasions. They never gave us the opportunity to claim them. And now they're stating that we have to show proof of ownership. It's almost like they're suing us for our property that they stole.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. I saw a release that their attorney released and said you had to prove ownership. Some of those people have been gone for 130 years. I don't know how you do that, short of having a membership to Ancestry.com, which a lot of people don't have a clue about. Yes. So they've put the burden on the people.
On the families.
Yeah.
This whole process, they've placed the burden on the families.
Yeah. Well, it looks to me like the contractor, whoever they used to remove those headstones, they threw them on a truck, and I blame Rominger Funeral Home because they were supposedly the contractor. Other people may have a different opinion, but it looks to me like they put those things on a dump truck or something and just went over and dumped them.
Well, yeah, I mean, if someone were standing on the back of a flatbed pickup truck and put their foot on the top of a headstone and kicked it, that's about what it looks like as far as that pile of headstones laying over there in the woods.
Yeah. Well, the Board of Education sure has let down the citizens here, and the superintendent, and I think the judge, the circuit court judge. The system has failed the people. I mean, it's one thing to move a cemetery, but it's another thing to do it with dignity. And in most situations, you try to avoid moving a cemetery altogether. You know, this Lunsford Cemetery would happen to be in a location where they were building a road to the hospital. Yeah, you could argue that that thing probably had to go. But if they're going to build baseball fields and sporting complexes, we talked and discussed several different options that would have worked to leave that cemetery alone. But the Board of Education was having none of it.
Yes, sir, that's true. They've even went so far as to make allegations that the Hoskins Cemetery could have been used as a sniper's nest.
Yeah.
Trying to pull and tug on the heartstrings of the members of our community, saying that it's all about keeping the children safe.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, folks. They've hoodooed you once again, because it doesn't have anything to do with the safety of the children.
That's right. If they're going to start removing every mountain that's near a school property, they better get busy. They got a lot of mountains to move, because they used that one as an example of a sniper's nest, and I covered that in my videos. Listen, that's a bunch of bull, and I don't care who knows it. There's every school in Clay County surrounded by a hill of some sort.
Well, yes, sir.
But I appreciate your time, Brent.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you doing what you're doing to try to get the word out, and I hope that more people become aware of this so that it can be avoided in the future.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir.
You know, this fight for the Hoskins Cemetery has been going on for a long time. It looks like in the end the Board of Education is going to win out. I don't know that there's going to be any consequences for them to pay. As I said in a couple of my videos, small communities, the Board of Education wields a big stick in small communities, and they own a lot of people. They control jobs, they control money, they control businesses with the commerce that they spread throughout the community. And you know, I just feel like there was a much better way for the Board of Education to have dealt with this and been more transparent. It's never easy to move a cemetery, that much I will agree on, but there could have been much better solutions to this problem. And being a little more transparent would have gone a long way toward adding a comfort level to the people. Now, they probably wouldn't have liked it, but I think they could have increased the comfort level and done a hell of a lot better job on public relations. The Board of Education, the superintendent there, their lawyers, they've just really pulled some shenanigans on the people here, and it's no wonder people don't trust government. So that's going to wrap it up here from Manchester Memorial Gardens. If you're out taking a drive, a Sunday drive, come to the very back right corner and see for yourself. Once again, this is the relocated Lunsford Cemetery here on your left, and this is the area that supposedly contains the remains of those from the Hoskins Cemetery. I have my suspicions. I think they put them in here in a mass grave, and they're just going to come in here in a few weeks and put some of these little flat stones, and everything's going to be all hunky-dory. But there are those of us who will never forget what has transpired over the course of the last several months on the dilemma surrounding the Hoskins Cemetery. Thank you all for watching.